I remember I was growing up. I was about 13 years old. There's a situation that went down between me and my mom. It was tough. I was playing video games just like every 13-year-old, and I was playing this game where you play online. You play with friends that aren't there. Like it's online. They're not there in the room with me. And I'm playing this online video game. And the thing about online games is you can't like pause it for everyone. Like that doesn't happen. You just gotta keep playing. You just gotta finish the game. And this was a Saturday morning, and I know it was a Saturday morning because I had to finish my chores before I could touch any video games. Chores first. That was the rule. So I finished my chores. I cleaned everything I needed to clean, y'all. I was free. So I started playing some video games, and my mom calls me from downstairs, and she's like, "Hey, Alex, you gotta come downstairs. You gotta clean this toilet. It is not clean." And I'm sitting there. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what are we doing?" But I'm like, "Mom, okay, I'll come downstairs. Let me just finish up this game real quick." And she's like, "No, babe. Hey, just pause it. Come downstairs. You need to clean this. You got to earn your video games." And I'm like, "Mom, you can't pause it. Let me finish this real quick." And she's like, "Babe, come down here and clean this toilet." And y'all, I really said this. I was like, "Woman, I can't pause the game." Conversation was over after that. wasn't no reasoning with my mom after that. Oh, man. Yeah. I don't know how I made it through that one. I was thoroughly punished after that. No more video games. My mom made sure that I knew my place that day. And that was a wake-up moment for me because I understood my mom is my mom. She's up here. She don't play. And she's up here. She has authority in my life, and I need to understand where I stand in our relationship. She's up here. I'm here. She has authority in my life. I need to have a healthy fear of my mom out of respect for her position in my life. And when I live life moving forward from that moment with a healthy fear of her in my mind, things generally went well in our relationship. I had a healthy fear there. There was a respect there. But it was because I humbled myself down to a place where I could accept her rightful position in my life. We need to see God in this same way. We need to see him up here as Father, as our authority, our Redeemer, our Lord. And then we need to act as if those things are true. There can't be a genuine relationship with God when he's here and we're trying to put ourselves here on the same level, God. There can't be real relationship there. We need to humble ourselves down to a place where we can rightfully accept his position in our lives. Our perspective on our life, on our discipleship, on our marriages, on parenting, our perspective on being a good student or being a good leader or being a good son or daughter, it all gets very skewed and distorted and out of whack when we're not living as if God is up here and we're down here. When we assume a higher position than we ought to in that little dynamic, we start getting entitled. We start believing that we deserve certain things from God. Start believing that we deserve certain titles or positions, or that we even deserve for God to make certain things happen in our lives at a given time. And that entitlement, man, it probably drives God nuts. Like Brian was just talking about it. God gave us everything that we have. And so when he sees us puffing up our chest, thinking we're special or important or that we deserve more in life and that we earn stuff that we have in our life and we have the right to this stuff, like God has the right to feel a little frustrated with us when we're putting ourselves higher in those moments. Especially because that entitlement, it doesn't just affect us. It doesn't affect just us and God. It affects all the people around us as well. Let's turn to Matthew chapter 23. We'll talk a little deeper about this stuff. Matthew 23, this chapter is crazy. This is Jesus. He is absolutely roasting all the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. He is calling out all the entitlement that he's seeing in their hearts, the ways that they're treating people. They're treating people these ways, people that they're supposed to be serving. And we're going to read about how the Pharisees don't really have this humility thing figured out and how it's turning into hypocrisy, which Jesus definitely does not play around with. So Matthew chapter 23, we're going to start in verse 1. It says this: Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must be careful to do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. Everything they do is done for people to see. They make their phylacteries wide and the tassels on their garments long. They love the place of honor at banquets and the most important seats in the synagogue. They love to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and to be called rabbi by others. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers. And do not call anyone on earth father, for you have one Father, and he's in heaven. Nor are you to be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Messiah. The greatest among you will be your servant. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." All right, so Jesus says all this. After this, he does these 7 woes where he's basically making a diss track against the Pharisees and teachers of the law, all the ways that they're leading people astray in their example. Jesus is laying them out in this chapter. And I think this is a really important thing to read. This is an important thing to note, that he's got to be incredibly indignant about what's going on here to be speaking out against what the Pharisees here are doing. Like, this has got to be an important thing that he's addressing. And I think there's a lot that's concerning here in what he's describing about the Pharisees, but I think the problem at the root of what the Pharisees were doing was an improper view of their worth. And before I explain that point, I'm going to make a statement here. And I want you guys, I think if you take this statement to heart, it's going to save you from a lot of trouble that the Pharisees ran into. But it's a statement where you're going to need thick skin and a soft heart to accept this statement. This applies to me too. But church, we are not that special. We are not that special. And let me explain this. You may be wondering why. I'm not that special. What? Whoa. Let me explain. You are worth everything to God. And because of that, he gave up everything for you. That's your worth. You have worth because the God of the heavens and the earth sees you as worth everything. So when you think you're special because of something outside of God's view of you, or especially if you think you're special because of the way other people view you, you're shortchanging yourself. Like, do you think that worth is gonna match up with the way God sees you in your life? Like, man, God wants you to live life to the full, with full confidence in the relationship you can have with him, full confidence in the way that he sees you and the grace that he has for you. But the moment you start to place your worth outside of that, like these Pharisees, making sure that worth is maintained is now priority number 1. And you lose all capacity to think of others first, because all you can see now is the deep need to be liked or valued in some way by others. And then genuinely serving people humbly, like that goes out of the door. Because now humility, bringing yourself lower, that's a threat to you now. Others first means you're lower and not the most important in the room. Being lowly and humble takes away opportunities for people to honor you and to make you feel special. That would mean actively lowering your worth in the eyes of others, and that's a big no-no when that's your source of worth. This is where Jesus caught these Pharisees. They needed those long tassels on their garments. They needed the place of honor at banquets. They relied on being called rabbi and father and teacher because those things replaced what God intended for them to have with him. They were fighting for their worth every day. And God forbid you were somebody who got in the way of them seeing themselves as worth it. Oh my goodness. But this pursuit of winning the approval of man to gain worth, it hardened their hearts, it darkened their understanding, and it corrupted them against the very people following them. It consumed them. And it separated them from the God that they were saying that they were leading people towards. They had the potential as religious leaders during this time in their community to make a lasting impact on the people that they taught and led. They had the potential to show people what God truly wanted from people that chose to follow him. They could have been the greatest servants to the people around them. And I think Jesus saw that potential in them, the potential in the ways that they could lead. And I think it made him that much more indignant toward their actions, knowing how far from that they were living. Church, I want to ask you, are you trying to fight for your worth and for your importance? Are there lies that you're choosing to believe about your value in this world? Because I have great news for you. God already fought for your worth. He died for it. Matter of fact, he came down to earth, he made himself lower than us, and then he died for it. But man, Satan is enslaving us when he convinces us that we need to fight to earn our worth in some kind of way. Satan wants us to deny the worth that God sees in us and settle for something that we can try and manufacture all our lives. And the thing is, when that validation or that sense of feeling special comes in our lives, it does feel pretty good. When we feel validated by others, when we feel like people think we're special, like it kind of feels good. When those things that we're holding on to for a sense of worth or purpose, when they actually feel good to us, they keep us coming back time and time again, but it is so fleeting, and it never lasts, and it always leaves us feeling some void. Like, when does it end? That constant pursuit of that feeling. And it's exhausting fighting for your own worth in your lives. Oh my gosh. You ought to fight for what God is already offering you. Because it is a fight. Like, it's not just easy, like, accept God. God sees me as worth it. Okay. Like, it doesn't just happen like that. There's so much stuff we got to work through in our hearts to actually accept that from God. And it's real. It's valid. And we've got to work through this stuff for the rest of our lives, accepting that from God. But man, at least that's worth the fight. That pursuit actually allows us freedom to put others before ourselves. It gives us the assurance and the security that we need, that we were built to have in a relationship with God. And it allows us to follow Jesus in the life that he lived as he was putting other people before himself.